If you're constantly wondering whether it's God speaking or just your own voice in your head, here's the brutal truth. Many believers are walking around convinced they're following divine direction when they're actually chasing their own desires dressed up in spiritual language, and it's more dangerous than they realize. God's voice never contradicts His word, period. So if what you're hearing goes against Scripture, you're not being led, you're being deceived. The human heart is deceitful above all things, Jeremiah 17:9, which means your emotions will often scream louder than the Spirit, especially when you're desperate for something to happen. You'll start justifying that relationship, that job, that move, saying, "God told me," when in truth you never even waited in silence long enough to listen. Real divine instruction carries peace, not pressure. God is not the author of confusion, 1 Corinthians 14:33. But the enemy is, and he loves to mimic God's voice in moments of haste, pride, or fear. One hidden way to discern the difference is to look at what the voice produces. When it's God, it refines your character, not just your circumstances. It leads you toward holiness, not comfort. If the voice you're hearing always aligns with your preferences, your timing, your ego, beware. You may be worshipping your will, not God's. Remember how Samuel mistook God's voice for Eli's, 1 Samuel 3? That wasn't just about a child learning to hear. It's a picture of how even the spiritually inclined can confuse familiarity with divine clarity. God's voice often comes in whispers, not waves. Elijah found Him not in the wind, fire, or earthquake, but in a still small voice, 1 Kings 19:12. And that stillness is why many miss it. We crave signs, noise, and drama, while God waits in the quiet for those who seek Him in truth. You'll know it's God when the voice draws you to surrender, not control. When it leads you to die to self, not elevate self. When it demands obedience without full understanding, because faith doesn't always feel comfortable, but it always bears fruit. That secret prompting to forgive, to wait, to walk away when logic says, stay, that's often Him. And when it's really God, it doesn't go away. It keeps nudging, persisting, interrupting your sleep, challenging your pride, and calling you out of everything convenient. Your own voice seeks shortcuts. God's voice builds endurance. Your own voice protects your image. God's voice purifies your soul. Your own voice demands answers. God's voice requires trust. Proverbs 3:5-6 tells you to lean not on your own understanding, but that's exactly what you're doing every time you act on a feeling without testing the Spirit, 1 John 4:1. The shocking reality is this: most of your gut feelings are trained responses to what your flesh craves, unless you've spent consistent time crucifying that flesh in prayer, fasting, and the Word. You can't hear God clearly when your soul is saturated with noise, opinions, and worldly advice. The voice of God doesn't always tell you what you want, it tells you what you need, and that's why so many ignore it. God doesn't flatter, He transforms. He doesn't hype you up, He humbles you. He doesn't speak to impress you, He speaks to change you. And yes, sometimes He goes silent, not because He's absent, but because He already spoke and He's waiting to see if you'll obey that last instruction. So here's the challenge: stop chasing voices that agree with your agenda and start seeking the one who disrupts it. Stop asking for confirmation when you already have conviction. Stop calling it God's will when deep down you know it's just yours. If you really want to hear Him, die to the need to control the answer. Because the moment you surrender your voice, you'll finally hear His.